Elena Ramirez had spent 30 years carving out a career in the fast-paced world of marketing. At 58, she was at the peak of her profession, leading campaigns for multi-million-dollar brands, earning the respect of colleagues, and thriving in the rush of high-stakes deadlines. But in a single phone call, everything changed. She was in the middle of a client pitch when her personal phone vibrated inside her leather briefcase. She ignored it, focusing on the presentation. Then it rang, again and again. Something was wrong. Excusing herself, she stepped into the hallway and answered, heart pounding. "Elena, it's Dr. Patel." The voice on the other end said, "Your mother's condition has worsened. She had a fall this morning. We need to talk about her long-term care, immediately." Elena's breath caught in her throat. Sophia Ramirez, her mother, her anchor, the strongest woman she had ever known, had been fighting a slow battle against Parkinson's for years. But this was different. Elena canceled her afternoon meetings, grabbed a cab, and rushed to the hospital. By the time she arrived, her mother was resting, frail and exhausted. A nurse adjusted the IV drip, giving Elena a sympathetic smile. "She kept asking for you," the nurse said softly. Elena sat beside the bed, gently taking her mother's cool, fragile hand. "Mama, I'm here." Her mother stirred, opening her eyes. A tired smile flickered across her face. "Mi niña, you always work too much." Elena let out a soft, shaky laugh. "And you always worry too much." The doctor arrived moments later, pulling up a chair. His tone was professional but firm. "Ms. Ramirez, we need to have a serious conversation. Your mother can't live alone anymore. She needs round-the-clock care." Elena's stomach twisted. "There has to be another way. Maybe more home visits, more help." Dr. Patel shook his head. "We're past that. She needs someone with her at all times, either a full-time caregiver or family." Family. The word hung in the air like a verdict. Elena knew what it meant. She had seen it happen to other women, brilliant professionals, forced to step back from their careers to care for aging parents, watching years of hard work unravel. She had always promised herself that wouldn't be her. She had built too much, fought too hard. But this wasn't about her. Elena looked at her mother, at the woman who had worked double shifts as a seamstress to put her through college, who had sacrificed so much so Elena could have the career she did. And suddenly, the choice didn't feel like a choice at all. That night, as she sat in her apartment staring at the skyline, she drafted her resignation email. Her hands trembled over the keyboard. She wasn't ready to walk away. But she knew one thing for certain. Neither her company nor the world would make this easy for her. And soon, she would find out just how hard they would try to make her disappear. Have you ever been forced to choose between career and family? If so, you're not alone. Comment 2 if you've ever felt like work didn't support your caregiving responsibilities. Or 7 if you believe companies should do more for caregivers. And if you love workplace revenge stories, don't forget to like and subscribe to Sophia's Revenge Stories for more powerful tales of justice, resilience, and triumph. Elena stepped into the office the next morning, her resignation email still sitting in her drafts. She had barely slept. Her mind replayed the doctor's words on a loop. She can't live alone anymore. Her mother needed her. That was undeniable. But walking away from her career, from everything she had worked for, that part wasn't so simple. As she made her way to her office, she felt the familiar rush of corporate life, the quick chatter of meetings, the rhythmic tapping of keyboards, the energy of a world that she had spent decades mastering. Could she really leave it all behind? Before she could dwell on the thought, a voice called out. "Elena, just in time." She turned to see Jordan Maxwell, her boss, the firm's chief marketing officer, standing at her door. His suit was crisp, his expression unreadable. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. Elena took a slow breath before following him inside, closing the door behind her. Jordan gestured to a chair. "Sit," she did. Then he hit her with it. "Elena, I heard about your mother's situation. I'm sorry to hear that. It must be tough." His voice was smooth, practiced. "That said, we need to talk about your role here." Her stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Jordan folded his hands on the desk. "Look, you've been a key part of this company for years. But we both know this is a fast-moving industry. If you step back now, things will shift." Elena's pulse quickened. "Are you saying that if I take time to care for my mother, I'll be replaced?" Jordan sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I wouldn't phrase it that way. But leadership needs consistency. Clients expect stability. If you're not fully here, we'll have to make adjustments. Restructuring." There it was, the gentle corporate warning wrapped in false sympathy. If she left, even temporarily, there would be no coming back. She clenched her fists under the desk. "I've given this company everything, Jordan. Late nights, weekends, sacrifices you wouldn't believe. And you're telling me that because I have a personal crisis, I'm suddenly disposable." Jordan's expression remained neutral. "It's just business, Elena. You know how it is." She swallowed the rising anger in her throat. She knew exactly how it was, and she hated it, but she didn't argue. Not yet. Instead, she simply nodded, standing up with forced composure. "I appreciate the clarity." As she left his office, her fingers trembled against the cool steel of her phone. She opened her email. Her resignation, still a draft. But now she had a different idea. Maybe she wasn't the one who needed to leave. Maybe they were the ones who needed a wake-up call. That night, Elena sat at her kitchen table staring at the untouched cup of coffee in front of her. She should have been exhausted. After spending hours at the hospital with her mother, she barely had time to think. But her mind wouldn't rest. Her conversation with Jordan replayed in her head. "If you're not fully here, we'll have to make adjustments. Restructuring." It wasn't just a warning. It was a threat. And she wasn't the only one facing it. Elena opened her laptop and started researching. It didn't take long to find story after story. Employees forced out of their jobs for needing time to care. For family. Women, especially. People who had dedicated years, decades, to their careers, only to be treated like liabilities the moment their personal lives demanded something back. This wasn't just happening to her. It was a pattern. And suddenly, she knew exactly what she had to do. She grabbed a notebook and started writing. Every frustration, every injustice, every conversation where she had been made to feel less than because she dared to be a caregiver and a professional. By the time the sun began to rise, she had filled pages. But she wasn't just venting, she was planning. Later that day, Elena met her former colleague, Maya Patel, now a consultant for workplace diversity initiatives. They hadn't spoken in months, but Maya had always been one of the few people in leadership who actually listened. "Elena, you look determined," Maya said as they sat across from each other at a cafe. Elena slid the notebook across the table. "I want you to read this." Maya skimmed the pages, her brow furrowing. "Wow. This is..." She looked up. "Are you planning to go public with this?" "Yes." Elena leaned forward. But not just as my personal story. This is bigger than me. Companies need to acknowledge that caregiving isn't some personal inconvenience. It's a reality, and they're failing their employees. Maya let out a slow breath, nodding. You're right. And you're not the only one. There are people inside and outside the company who would support this. Elena felt her pulse quicken. Who? Maya hesitated, then lowered her voice. There are other women in our company, some still working there, some who were pushed out, who have been through the same thing. If you're serious about this, I can connect you. Elena's mind raced. This was bigger than she expected. She, wasn't just fighting back. She was building something powerful. As Maya sipped her coffee, she met Elena's eyes. Are you ready for this? Elena smiled for the first time in days. I was built for this. Elena had spent years crafting powerful marketing campaigns, shaping public narratives, and driving engagement. But this time, she wasn't selling a product. She was exposing a broken system. Sitting in her living room, surrounded by pages of research and handwritten notes, she took a deep breath and opened her laptop. The first email went to a journalist she knew from her corporate days, someone who had covered workplace discrimination cases before. The second went to a legal advocate specializing in caregiver rights. And the third, a carefully worded post on LinkedIn. Elena hesitated for only a second before hitting post. How many careers have been quietly destroyed because someone chose to care for family? How many brilliant professionals have been discarded because companies refuse to see caregiving as part of life, not a weakness? I know this because it happened to me, and I refused to be silent. She attached the research she had gathered, real statistics, real stories, and within minutes, her inbox exploded. Dozens of messages, then hundreds. Women, men, employees at major corporations, even executives in secret whispering the same truth. This was happening everywhere. And then came the call. Elena, it's Jordan. She leaned back in her chair, voice steady. Jordan, to what do I owe the pleasure? There was a beat of silence before he spoke. I saw your post. Good. Then you understand why I'm doing this. Elena. He sighed, his voice low, measured. Let's be realistic. These things happen, but dragging the company into a public battle, it won't end well for you. Elena smiled slightly. That almost sounded like a threat, Jordan. Pause. Then, the voice she knew all too well. The corporate PR voice, carefully rehearsed, always in control. Look, you had a great run here. And out of respect for that, I'm offering you a final opportunity. Let this go. Walk away quietly, and we can discuss a generous severance package. Maybe even some consulting opportunities down the line. Elena exhaled slowly. There it was. The buyout. They didn't want to fight. They wanted her silence. She glanced at her screen. Her LinkedIn post had gone viral. More people were watching than they had expected. And TechNova was starting to sweat. She gripped the phone tighter. Jordan, tell me something. If I were a man stepping back from my career to take care of a sick parent, would this conversation be different? Silence. Exactly what I thought, she said, her voice firm. Elena, be smart about this, Jordan pressed. You don't want to become unhireable. Elena let out a soft, bitter laugh. If companies don't want to hire someone who stands up for caregivers, then I don't want to work for them. Another pause. Then Jordan sighed. All right, Elena. Have it your way. The call disconnected. Elena stared at her phone, then at her laptop, where the messages kept pouring in. They thought they could silence her. Instead, they just made her louder. The fallout came faster than Elena expected. By morning, her LinkedIn post had over 100,000 views, with thousands of comments. Caregivers, working parents, even former executives admitting that they, too, had been forced out when family came first. The movement had begun. But TechNova wasn't going down without a fight. That afternoon, her phone buzzed with a news alert. TechNova under fire for alleged workplace discrimination against caregivers. Attached was a cold, polished statement from the company's PR team. At TechNova, we value all employees and support work-life balance. While we cannot comment on individual cases, we remain committed to fostering an inclusive workplace. Elena scoffed. It was the same corporate nonsense she had written for years. A few minutes later, another call came in. It was Maya, her former colleague. "Elena, it's worse than you think," Maya said, her voice tense. "I overheard a meeting this morning. They're digging into your record, trying to discredit you. They want to make it look like you were underperforming before you left." Elena felt a cold anger settle in her chest. So this was their move. "They're scared," Maya continued. "But if they control the narrative first, they think they can turn people against you." Elena took a deep breath. "Then I guess I'll just have to beat them to it." She ended the call and turned on her laptop. This time, she wasn't just posting her story. She was about to expose everything. That evening, a new headline appeared on the front page of a major business news site. Former TechNova exec exposes internal emails on caregiver discrimination. Elena had leaked the documents, emails, internal memos, proof that TechNova had a pattern of quietly phasing out employees with caregiving responsibilities. It was all there. Within hours, the media frenzy exploded. TechNova's leadership was scrambling. Stock prices dipped. Investors started asking questions. And then, Jordan Maxwell called again. "Elena," he said, his voice no longer smooth and controlled. "This is getting out of hand." She leaned back in her chair, smiling. "Is it?" "You're making enemies in the wrong places," he warned. "You need to think about your future." Elena's voice was steady. "No, Jordan. You need to think about yours. Because mine? I'm just getting started." 1 year later, Elena stood on a stage, looking out at a packed auditorium. A large banner behind her read, National Caregivers Summit, Redefining Work and Family. The audience was filled with caregivers, corporate leaders, policymakers, people who had once been invisible in boardrooms, now standing together, demanding change. Elena adjusted the microphone and began, her voice clear and steady. "A year ago, I thought I had lost everything. I had built a career, worked harder than I ever thought possible. But the moment I needed flexibility, the moment I chose to care for my family, I was told I was replaceable." She let the words sink in. What I didn't know then was that I wasn't alone. Thousands of you reached out, thousands of stories just like mine, stories of sacrifice, of strength, of injustice, and together we turned those stories into power. Applause rippled through the room. TechNova thought they could silence me. Instead, they exposed themselves. Laughter and cheers erupted. Today, thanks to people like you, more companies are changing their policies. Laws are being rewritten. And caregivers, people who give so much of themselves, are finally being seen. As she spoke, Elena spotted Maya in the crowd, smiling with pride. And a few rows behind her, Jordan Maxwell. his expression unreadable. But she knew why he was here. Because TechNova had been forced to change. Because they now had a caregiver support program. Because he had lost, and she had won. As she wrapped up her speech, the audience gave her a standing ovation. Elena stepped off stage, feeling lighter than she ever had. She wasn't just someone who had been pushed out of her job. She was someone who had changed the game. And this was only the beginning. This story isn't just about Elena. It's about the reality so many people face. Caregiving isn't a weakness, and no one should have to choose between their career and their loved ones. Elena's journey shows us that standing up for what's right doesn't just change your life. It can change the world around you. Now, I want to hear from you. What do you think about Elena's story? Do you believe she made the right choice? What are your thoughts on how TechNova treated her? Comment 2 if you love this story, or 7 if you think it could have ended differently. And if you enjoy workplace, revenge stories, don't forget to like and subscribe to Sophia's Revenge Stories, where we bring you powerful stories of justice, resilience, and triumph every day. See you in the next one.